Da, da, da. This looks like a fake background, but it's actually real. It looks like one of those like designs you can put behind yourself. Mm. The big focus in addiction recovery is this thing called self. If you read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that word self pops up quite a bit. Yeah. And it pops up in all these different ways: self-reliance, self-centeredness, self-pity, self-seeking. Yeah. But there's some amazing statements in that book. Some things like self-reliance has failed us. Yeah? Or things that I'm going to mess up the wording, but the wording it's something like self-manifested in 100 ways is what has defeated us. Yeah. Self-knowledge avails us nothing. So this word self keeps popping up. Yeah. And obviously when you read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it is the focus in that it's what has defeated us or failed us or driven us incorrectly. Self-seeking. Yeah. Self-seeking has driven us ineffectively, and it's made our life very uncomfortable. So this thing self manifests through the mental system. Yeah. Through the thinking, let's say. Self manifested in 100 ways. In AA, or in recovery, the big focus of that, one of the big focuses of self is resentment. Yeah? So looking at the past, obviously, and how we hold resentments. Now those resentments are self. Yeah. The real root of the issue, both from the point of view of non-duality and 12-step recovery, is that you're identified as self. So if self is manifesting through the mental system, everything that mental system mentions or says to you as you're taking that to be you. Yeah? So really you're not living your life, self is living your life. Now does self have your best interests in mind? In my experience, and I think if you look at your experience, it does not. Yeah? And if you're living on self-will, yes, which is why in recovery there's so much focus on a higher power, because that self-will is directed by, guess what? Self. Yeah? And self is what has defeated us, self-reliance. So that self-will needs to be turned over to a higher power. There is a solution, as they say in recovery. This is the solution. Yes? You're not going to think your fucking way out of self. Self cannot get out of self. It doesn't matter how many books are written about you're going to think your way out of the thought pattern. Addiction is a mental disease, and you're going to get out of it through some kind of cognitive movement. That cognitive movement is painted completely in self. Yeah, that is the issue. Self-reliance is what has failed us. As long as there's a reliance on self, yes, it's going to continue to fail you. Now, you don't need to be a drug addict or an alcoholic to look at your own life, look at the thinking, yeah, and how that thinking, or let's say interpretation of what's happening at any time is not matching what's happening. Yeah. Next time you take a shower, just go up into the head and reference what you're thinking about. It's probably not the shower you're in. No? It's about yesterday or tomorrow. If it's about the shower you're in, it's an interpretation of that shower, meaning an opinion. Which is why in the Zen writings they say, if you want to be free, lose interest in your opinions, your likes and dislikes, essentially. Yeah? So self arises through the mental system. However it arises. Judgments, it could be emotions, feelings. Self is arising constantly, yes? Is that a problem? No. Self is going to keep arising because that's what self does. That's what the mental does, yes? It arises in this way. The thing is, where we get into trouble is we feel that self is arising to us. That those thoughts are your thoughts. So that whatever those thoughts mention, when self manifests, you're listening to it, taking it as you, and now self is directing your life. Yeah. If you're in AA or if you're in a recovery program, it's pretty obvious that self has misdirected your life. Yes? If you have a ton of anxiety or depression, you're experiencing probably a similar movement. Self has the gear stick of the car. Yeah? Yes. If you're taking yourself to be the manifestations of self, whether it be resentments, judgments, interpretations, however that's manifesting, yes, that is directing your life. This is the root of the issue. We're taking ourselves to be something which is not our true nature. Now, is self arising? Yes, self and individuality is arising. A mental system's coming, there's thoughts, there's feelings, there's sense, there's emotions, yeah? But even our experience of those as self is super limited. We're not even really feeling the capacity that we could be feeling, yes? Because what we are is vast, it's super aware, it's very open. And as soon as self takes a control of that and shoves it into this body, let's say, this individuality, it becomes super limited. Yeah. So hearing, let's say for instance, is not really hearing what's going on, but it's mostly listening to this mental turning, which is constantly happening, constantly interpreting, analyzing, judging, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Yes. The process of recovery is to see that you are not self and to lose faith in that system. To take that self-will and turn it over to a higher power, and then look how your life goes. Is it going better? Great. Then you've lost even more faith in that mental system. So even though it keeps arising, yes, you're not buying it, essentially. And it's no longer directing your life. Now your life is being directed by a higher power. Let's call that higher power life. Yeah? And all of a sudden it starts to go smooth. Smoother. At least you flow through it smoother. Yes? So this is essentially, at least how I'm seeing it, this is the root of the issue. We're identified as this thing called self. Yeah? In psychological terms, it's not even a true self. It's a false self. Because as you grow up, your system, your mind, yeah, it has all these ways of manipulating and relating to your environment. So no matter what the environment presents to you or what life presents to you, it's taken through this lens of a false self. That false self makes life very uncomfortable. If you just look at the example of your own life, you can probably see it. For a lot of people, they could win $1 million and immediately the thought is, I need another 3 million just to be comfortable, yeah? That's false self. That's interpretation of what's going on. There you go. It's quite clear if you sit down and watch the mind present all of these different ideas. Yeah? The presentation is fine. It's taking ourselves to be that presentation. It's the identification as self, which is the bondage of self. In Buddhism, there is no self. Yeah? If you really search inside your body and look for I or me, there's nothing there. Behind the mental process, it's space, it's awareness. Yeah? Not as a you. It feels more like you than you, but it's not as a body, let's say. Yeah? So the bondage of self is the belief that we put into this mental presentation of the false self. Because as soon as you put belief into that false self, all of its interpretations are the lens that you see life through. And many times, especially for people in addiction recovery, from the ones I talk to, it's scared. They see life and they're scared of it. Essentially, life is seen as coming at them. That's the lens, yes, of false self. And when we're listening to that self, that's how we see life. That's how it's taken in. And this would be the root of the issue. The reason I love non-duality and that message of negation is because it kind of presents this whole thing that recovery presents, but very cleanly and very simply. It's not a trying to get somewhere as self. You're not trying to purify or make the mental system into some super mental system. You're seeing because you can see it. Yeah, the perceiver is not what's being perceived. As Huang Po said, or Nisargadatta also said this. Yeah? You can see that self arise. You can see thought arise, emotion, sensation. You can see all this stuff moving, yeah? Because you can see it, you're not it. This is negation, essentially. Yeah? Or inquiry would be who. To who is that arising? It's arising to I. Who am I? And then we stop there, yeah? Negation is really like, in my experience, the key. Because if I'm trying to get somewhere as the mind, I'm not seeing self and its role. I'm not seeing my role in things, which is a huge problem as far as addiction is concerned, yeah? I'm seeing everybody else's fucking role in my misery, but I'm missing I'm missing my role. Which is why some people don't like the 12 steps, because they don't want to look at their own role, yeah? Because seemingly that role is the most important fucking role. Because we're seeing through that lens, man. Yeah. You could live in the French Polynesian. If you're seeing through that lens, it's shit. Yeah. That's the most important role, is your role. The you that you're not, but living as, identified as, yeah. Yeah. So negation really looks directly at that, yeah, and negates it as not, I'm not that. It's not denying its existence. It's denying that it's not your true nature. Because it's arising and you can see it. Another really great thing about non-duality, yeah, is it means not two, non-dual, not two. Yeah. So everything that has two-ness to it, you can negate. And it doesn't take that long to see all the two-ness, yeah? Like your eyes, for instance, they arise, essentially, your vision is dependent on what it's looking at. Yes? So the eyes and the computer or the phone or whatever you're looking at right now, the eyes are dependent on that vision. Two. One, two. Not you. Yeah, the ears pick up sound. So if there needs to be sound, for the ears to pick that up, there's duality too. Yeah, for like, there needs to be dislike. That's two. That's not you. You see? For thought, there's an object to thought. So you negate thought. Now there's a feeling that you're the one who's seeing thought. Yes? But then again, we're in two-ness, no? There's a sense of an I that's seeing thought. That's two. So you have to negate that. That's the thief-policeman side of things. A thought arises, and then there's another one that says, I see that. Yeah, it's like the thief is the thought, and the policeman says, I see the thief. Now you're not the policeman either. That's the thief switching roles. That's a kicker. A lot of people see self arise. Yeah, and then they say, oh, I see it arise. Yes, but you're still, that's another aspect of self. Two sides of one coin. You see? So if you look at all of the aspects that you're taking to be you, yes, if there's a duality in that aspect of yourself, that's not you see. That eliminates the senses pretty quickly. Yes, the other side of it is impermanence. Self-nature, what you are, is unchanging. And as Ramana would say, it's immutable. And so if there's anything that's changing, also you can negate this. Body is definitely changing. Thoughts are changing. Your experience of self is also changing all the time. Yeah? I'm great, I'm a piece of shit. I'm a father, I'm a son. It's constantly moving around. Yeah? Where's that I? That's the inquiry. Who is all that arising to? Yeah? That's all self. Or as Paul Hederman would say, self-ing. Self-ing. There is no self in my experience. If self is anything, it's big S self or big M mind, as they would say in Zen. Yeah? Which is not individuality. There's individuality within big S self. But when I say self, I mean it from the AA side of things. Yes? Which is small self. Small S self. Yeah. It's the manifestations of small self, small S self, which we could also say as your false self, which are making you uncomfortable. Are you trying to change that false self? No, you're seeing that you're not it. Through inquiry and through negation. In this way. Yes? You're seeing that you are not that. And then what are you? The thing that you've been looking for the whole time. You are that. You are that, not as you. not as the body mind, yeah? And then what happens? When that self, small s, or false self arises, it doesn't take hold. More so, you don't take hold of it. That's really, you don't grab onto it. It's a non-grasping. Yes? So it no longer controls you. When the head says turn left, you don't turn left, essentially. And then you see what happens. Yeah? In my experience, things smooth out. Also, the mental system gets a lot quieter because you're not listening to it. Yeah. There's so much weight. There's so much weight. You can't see the weight, but there's so much weight that's put on life through the mental system. And that mental system, which you're taking yourself to be, I would say 99% of those thoughts are unnecessary. Yeah, it's almost like the head is processing the past and just trying to predict the future and constantly grasping at these ideas from its false sense. Now remember, as they say in Buddhism, there is no self. Yeah, there's no center to the wheel. You, what you are as awareness or being or whatever you want to call it, is everywhere. Yeah. And then some teachers would say it feels like it's localized in the center of the body, right down through the center of yourself. But everybody has that. Yeah. So it's like everywhereness is popping up individually in all these different places. Very paradoxical to the mind. But all we can do is really talk about it, yeah. So living as that false self, is really seeing things dualistically. But it's an interpretation of duality. You see? And that's what gets uncomfortable. And then you want relief from that discomfort. But if you're living as that system, you want relief from that discomfort as the system, essentially. And you can't get out of it. So drinking, drugs, ad infinitum. Yeah. Until, what happened to me was, I guess the system, it just, the no reliance of it proved itself. Yeah. There's nowhere else to turn besides AA, really. It was like the last stop. Yeah. And then what does AA say? You are the pivot point of the problem. What you're taking yourself to be, this manifestation of self, or all of the manifestations of self. Yeah. So now we're going to take that self-will and we're going to turn that over to higher power. And then you're going to lose some faith in that self, in the arising of that self. Yeah. We're going to release the grip from the bondage of self. What is the bondage? The bonding agent is identification with particularly the mental system and the body. But the body only arises because the mental system, like the Course in Miracles says, the mind interprets to the body of which it is a part. That's the bondage of self right there. Thought comes up. There's a presupposing that I am that thought. I'm bonded to that thought. That's the whole thing. Yeah? Inquire into who is bonded to that thought. That bondage is released. The grasp is let go. You're no longer bonded to that thought. You sit back into what you are, big M mind or big S self. Does the false self still arise? Yeah, all the time. It's chattering a lot, yeah? But you live at the same time as individuality lives. And rather than trying to pivot to the false self's direction, you no longer try to pivot in that direction. Yeah. But then you really get to know that individual. Your relationship with your individuality becomes way more beautiful. It's more substantial. You actually feel like you're here. Yeah. There's resonance through the body. The whole system can chill out so that you can really see it arise. That's part of the beauty of it. Yeah. That's part of the beauty of it. And the key is to see that you're not self. Yeah. To remove belief in that arising. Because like they say in AA, self-reliance is what defeated us. Yeah. Because self has all these manifestations which make life very uncomfortable. Jealousy, self-pity, self-seeking. Yeah. Really, they're like the epitome of duality. Yeah, of separation. It's like separation, self-centeredness. That mental system is only referring to that mental system. Wei Wu Wei said 99% of your thoughts are about a you that doesn't exist. Yeah? The head is constantly referencing itself. That is duality. Yeah? Because if there's body here, there's body there. That's two. You know? That's pretty much the center. I don't know how much else you could have duality. A feeling of being subject and then a bunch of objects. 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, whatever. 2. Non-duality, not 2. You are not that relationship. Yeah? Everything in the phenomenal world is in relationship, including the sense of individuality, self. You are taking yourself to be the ultimate subject, let's say, of all of the objects. So what's happening then? You're happening to life, or life is happening to you. That's separation, that's duality, that's the epitome of suffering. Yeah? It gets super uncomfortable for a lot of people, so we turn to drugs. Yeah? It's very obvious to me. I don't know how much more obvious you can get. Yeah? You're seeing from separation. Yes? The world is seemingly coming at you. That would be scary. Yes? That fear makes life very uncomfortable. You want out of that discomfort, but you're taking yourself to be the body. So you try to get out of the discomfort as the body. You're not doing it. This is the head doing it. So I'm not blaming somebody or something here. Yeah, we're pointing out duality so that we can fucking see it arise. So we try to get out of that discomfort as it. Drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever your form is going to take. Yeah? And it doesn't work. Yes? Doesn't work. So you go into recovery. Self-will has failed us. What else has failed us? Self-knowledge. Oh, so the knowledge that comes into the mental system, it avails us nothing. Why? Because it's the mental system which is the problem. Yes? It's that self which is the problem. So the stronger that self gets, the more individual you get. So now the addiction is no longer crack or alcohol or gambling. Now the addiction is fucking physics, calculus, or recovery. meditation, spirituality. I know this from my own experience. We get addicted to this shit. Yes? So it's addiction manifesting in a different way. It's self, yet again, running your life. The big one, another big one I should say these days, is work, yeah? It's work to try to get shit. Yeah, so that the world doesn't seem so scary. But it doesn't matter how much shit you accumulate, it's still scary, isn't it? And I know that because I've sat in meetings with people with $50 million, and they're just as depressed as I am. Yeah? So what's going on? What's going on is the exact thing that we're pointing out here. The exact nature of the issue. That arising of self is controlling your life and making things often very uncomfortable. Non-duality is saying not to. If there's a self, small s self here, then there's a bunch of selves, let's say, or forms and names out there. That is duality, you're not that. Yes. I don't know how else to really look at it. But that's how it's kind of, I guess, popped out here. And the relief from seeing that you're not that system right away is like unbelievable, yeah? And then you really get to know that individual. You get to feel, you feel more because you're not so entangled with it. It's not a personal thing anymore. Or let's say you're not taking it so personally all the time. It's like Rule 62 in AA, don't take yourself too serious, yeah? Self cannot do that. Self is taking itself super fucking serious. If you're believing in that presentation of the head, you're taking everything super serious. Yeah? If you're taking everything super seriously, and life is coming at you at the way life happens, which is a lot of shit, take it super seriously, don't you feel like your anxiety might be a little bit warranted if you're living as that mental system? Come on, how could you not be anxious if you feel that the world is constantly coming at you? You're going to be anxious. Yeah. And you're not going to get out of that anxiety as an anxious system, which we call self. That's that. So you start to see that you're not the manifestations of self. Who do those manifestations arise to? You start to inquire into these things, yeah? Who? Who? Is the world happening to me, or is the world happening within me? Meaning like not being just the body and the mind. Because we could sit here and question all kinds of things about the head, all of our thoughts and things, yeah. But if we're not looking at the fucking root of the identification which is causing the issue, what are we even talking about? Yeah. Because if we're not looking at the root of the issue, everything else that comes after that root of the issue is seen through that lens of self, of that interpretation. So it's seen incorrectly, essentially. It's seen through the lens of a false self. So all the talking and the chattering about everything else that comes after this is fine, yeah, but we can't expect it to bring an immense amount of freedom because we're seeing it through the lens of duality. That's like the simplicity of non-duality, which gets super beautiful. So looking at this individuality and inquiring into it is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of what we're doing, both in recovery and in whatever thing you're doing. Because that's where the freedom lies, not as self, but from self. Freedom lies not as self, but from self. And then you land in what remains. Not as self, but from self.